You're not the only one who feels the sadness surrounding Luther Vandross's life, which was marked by endless loneliness. He never married or had children, spending most of his years facing personal struggles while dedicating himself to his music. Despite all his talent and the joy he brought to others, it often felt like his contributions went unnoticed, with his final moments ending in tragedy. Take a deep breath, and let's take a closer look at the emotional and powerful story of Luther Vandross. From an early age, Luther Vandross was deeply shaped by the tragic history of his family. Both he and his mother, Mary Ida Vandross, endured the heartbreaking loss of his father and 3 siblings, all of whom died from complications related to diabetes and asthma. These profound losses cast a long shadow over Luther's life, influencing the emotional depth of his music, which often touched on themes of love, grief, and longing. Mary Ida was a constant pillar in Luther's life. She played a pivotal role in his emotional strength, and their shared experiences of loss only deepened their bond. Tragically, she would eventually lose all 4 of her children, with Luther's passing in 2005 marking the end of their shared journey. Now, let's shift our focus back to Luther's career, which was anything but easy. Despite the weight of his personal losses, he built an illustrious career, facing challenges both in his professional life and in managing his public image. He was fully aware of the delicate balance required to preserve his success in the music industry. The idea of coming out as gay was something he wrestled with, knowing it could have been disastrous for his career, especially with his predominantly female fan base. His fans turned to him for more than just entertainment. They found in his voice an emotional connection, a source of comfort during their own times of longing and loss. But behind the curtains of his fame, Vandross had to wrestle with the decision of whether to reveal his true self or protect the carefully crafted persona that had earned him so much adoration. Bruce Vilanch, a close friend and confidant of Vandross, once shared a revealing glimpse into the private world of the man behind the music. Vilanch recalled how Vandross lived a life of profound secrecy, choosing to shield himself from the public eye in ways that most could never understand. "No one knows I'm in the life," Vandross once confided, speaking of his hidden sexuality. The weight of that statement captures the essence of his inner turmoil, suggesting the isolation he must have endured while leading such a public life. His longest romantic relationship was with a man in the late 1980s and early 1990s, a time when Vandross lived in Los Angeles. But even this was a secret, known only to his closest friends and those he trusted with his vulnerability. It wasn't until December 2017, 12 years after Luther Vandross's death, that the world finally learned the truth about his sexuality, thanks to Patti LaBelle, a close friend of the legendary singer. In her typically candid style, LaBelle confirmed that Vandross was indeed gay, something he had kept private throughout his life. The reason for his secrecy was clear. He didn't want to disappoint or upset his massive fan base. As LaBelle explained, Vandross had a lot of lady fans, and he simply didn't want to upset the world. Her words gave us a glimpse into the inner conflict Vandross must have faced, the struggle between living authentically and protecting the image he had carefully built to sustain his career. Despite his success, Vandross never married, nor did he have children, leading to a life that remained deeply personal and, in many ways, isolated. But Vandross's challenges weren't just confined to his sexuality. As a perfectionist who was constantly striving for excellence, he also dealt with immense pressures surrounding his health and physical appearance. A new documentary, Never Too Much, set to air on CNN in January, sheds light on another side of Vandross, the one who treated food like medicine. To cope with the stress of being a perfectionist songwriter, he found solace in food, particularly junk food. This was not just indulgence, it became his panacea, a way to calm the anxiety when he felt his music wasn't meeting his standards. Vandross himself confessed to a close friend that he was obsessed with food, saying, I'm thinking about food from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep. It was a struggle that marked his life. In a way, VANDROSS was an emotional eater, using food in the same way others might turn to drugs for comfort. His weight fluctuated dramatically, often yo-yoing between 180 pounds and over 300 pounds. His addiction to carbs was well known, and he even admitted to once eating a hamburger between two glazed donuts because he couldn't find any bread. Despite attempts to control his weight by going on high-protein diets and cutting out pasta, rice, and potatoes, he could never sustain these changes for long. Each time he lost weight, it would spiral back up, with the scale tipping over by more than 100 pounds at times. The toll this constant fluctuation took on his body, combined with his ongoing battle with diabetes and hypertension, caught up with him in 2003 when he suffered a severe stroke. Though he regained the ability to walk, the effects of these health struggles were undeniable. Beyond his personal battles, VANDROSS also faced harsh public scrutiny. In December 1985, he filed a libel suit against a British magazine that had falsely linked his significant weight loss, 85 pounds to be exact, to AIDS. At the time, AIDS was surrounded by stigma, and the rumor that he had contracted the disease could have severely damaged his reputation. VANDROSS, who had started his journey to better health weighing 325 pounds, was deeply angered by the false attribution surrounding his weight loss, particularly given the era's widespread fear and misunderstanding of health conditions like diabetes. His frustration was compounded by the public's inability to grasp the true challenges of his situation. This incident not only underscored the difficulties VANDROSS faced in managing his personal health, but also revealed the immense pressure he was under as he tried to maintain a public image amid the relentless media scrutiny that followed him throughout his career. As if the challenges surrounding his health weren't enough, VANDROSS's misfortunes seemed to stretch beyond his control. One of the darkest chapters of his life unfolded in 1986 when a devastating car accident left an indelible mark on his journey. What had begun as a celebratory drive quickly spiraled into a nightmare, sending shockwaves through his fans and nearly costing him everything. On January 12, 1986, Luther Vandross, alongside his close friends Jimmy Salvemini and his brother and manager Larry, decided to take a drive through the scenic Hollywood Hills. The trio had just wrapped up work on an album, a moment of pride and celebration for everyone involved. Spirits were high as they cruised along Laurel Canyon Boulevard, a picturesque route often associated with Los Angeles's vibrant, carefree lifestyle. For Vandross, who was known for his attention to detail and perfectionism in music, this drive was a rare opportunity to relax and soak in the moment of accomplishment. However, the celebratory mood would soon take a devastating turn. Vandross, behind the wheel of his sleek 1985 Mercedes-Benz convertible, was speeding, 50 miles per hour in a zone with a posted limit of 35 miles per hour. The sharp, winding curves of Laurel Canyon, though beautiful, were infamous for their danger. As Vandross rounded a curve, the car veered across the double yellow line into oncoming traffic. What followed was a horrifying chain reaction. Vandross's car first collided with a 1972 Mercury Marquis, the force of which sent his Mercedes spinning out of control. It then slammed head-on into a 1979 Cadillac Seville, leaving behind a scene of destruction that stood in stark contrast to the joyful drive they had embarked on just moments earlier. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, and both Vandross and Jimmy Salvemini were quickly transported to the Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, one of Los Angeles's most famous hospitals. The situation was dire, and the mood in the hospital was tense, as both men had sustained serious injuries and their lives hung in the balance. Tragically, Larry Salvemini, who had been in the front passenger seat, didn't survive the crash. The impact had been especially severe on him, and despite the best efforts of the paramedics, Larry's life was cut short. His death was an unimaginable loss to his family and an emotional blow to VANDROSS, who had been driving when the crash occurred. VANDROSS himself wasn't spared from the wreckage. He suffered 3 broken ribs, a shattered hip, and several bruises and cuts to his face. While these injuries weren't life-threatening, they were significant and required a long and painful recovery. But the physical toll on his body was just one part of the ordeal. The emotional scars, deep and unrelenting, would linger far beyond the physical healing. Luther Vandross, celebrated for his commanding stage presence and smooth performances, now found himself in an entirely different, painful reality. The days of celebrating his career were behind him, replaced by the harsh reality of a lengthy and difficult recovery. The injuries he sustained, broken ribs, a shattered hip, and numerous cuts and bruises, were severe enough on their own. Yet, it was the emotional and psychological torment that truly weighed on him. The tragic accident had taken the life of his close friend and manager, Larry Salvemini, and that loss was something Vandross couldn't escape. It wasn't just the healing of his body that he had to face, but the overwhelming guilt that haunted him day after day. In the back seat of the car, Jimmy Salvemini, a young artist with a promising future, also sustained injuries, cuts, bruises, and contusions. His physical wounds, though painful, paled in comparison to the emotional toll. He had lost not only his brother, but also his manager, and, in a way, his future. The tragic accident had erased the excitement of the album's completion and replaced it with grief and uncertainty. The career that had seemed so promising was now overshadowed by a tragedy that no one could have foreseen. But the aftermath of the accident didn't end with the physical injuries. Vandross was soon facing legal consequences that only deepened the weight of the situation. The death of Larry Salvemini led to charges of vehicular manslaughter, a charge that carried the risk of prison time. The public scrutiny was relentless, and Vandross's every move was under a microscope. Fortunately, there was no evidence that alcohol or drugs had been involved in the crash, but the emotional burden remained. In the end, Vandross pleaded no contest to reckless driving, acknowledging the gravity of the situation without a prolonged legal battle. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was one that allowed him to take responsibility for the tragedy, even as the emotional pain lingered. Despite the plea, the legal consequences were still severe. Vandross's driver's license was suspended for a year, a penalty that, while somewhat lenient, did little to ease his emotional turmoil. The suspension served as a constant reminder of the tragic accident and the loss it caused. It was a chapter of his life that would forever be marked by the weight of that moment. At first, the Salvemini family seemed to understand that the crash had been a tragic mistake, not an act of malice. In those early days, they expressed support for Luther Vandross, recognizing that he too was suffering deeply. It was a moment of mutual grief as both sides grappled with the devastating consequences of the accident. But as time wore on, and the harsh reality of their loss began to set in, the emotions of the Salvemini family took a darker turn. The grief that once unified them gave way to a growing sense of anger. The tragic event, though never intended, became something they could not easily reconcile with, and their sorrow transformed into resentment. It was not long before the Salvemini family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Vandross. What had initially felt like an unfortunate accident now became a legal battle, one that added yet another layer of complexity to an already overwhelming situation. Vandross, already struggling with immense guilt and facing a long road to physical recovery, found himself caught in the throes of a legal fight that threatened to dominate his life for years to come. The legal battle, however, was eventually settled out of court. In an attempt to bring closure to the case, Vandross agreed to pay the Salvemini family approximately $630,000. While the settlement provided some financial compensation for their profound loss, it did little to heal the emotional scars left by the accident. For the Salvemini family, the pain of losing a loved one couldn't simply be mitigated by money. And for Vandross, the payment marked the end of his legal struggles, but it did nothing to alleviate the heavy burden of guilt that weighed on him every day. But just when it seemed like the worst was over, fate had more hardship in store for Vandross. In 2003, he faced the consequences of ongoing health issues, particularly diabetes and hypertension. These silent killers, as they are often called, had long been affecting his body in subtle yet damaging ways. If left unchecked, these conditions can lead to severe complications, and for Vandross, that time had come. On April 16, 2003, he suffered a major stroke at his home in New York City. The impact was devastating. Vandross fell into a coma for nearly 2 months, and his family, friends, and fans were left in a state of anxious uncertainty. The world seemed to pause, holding its breath, hoping for news, but no one could have predicted how deeply this stroke would affect him, not just physically, but emotionally as well. The stroke's effects were profound, especially on Vandross's voice, a voice that had captivated millions, that had made him an international superstar, was now rendered nearly useless. For a man whose entire identity was built around his singing, the loss of this ability was crushing. It wasn't just a physical setback, it felt like the loss of who he was. The stroke gradually left Vandross debilitated, a cruel reminder of the fragility of life. In the beginning, he was confined to a wheelchair, an unimaginable reality for someone who had spent his life commanding the stage with boundless energy and presence. The contrast between the vibrant performer and the man now struggling to regain basic physical abilities was stark and jarring. Yet even as his body betrayed him, Vandross exhibited remarkable determination. Slowly but surely, he began to regain strength, eventually managing to walk again. This small but significant victory marked a milestone in his recovery, though it was clear the road ahead would be long and full of obstacles. Amid his personal struggles, Luther Vandross's resilience continued to shine, but it wasn't without challenges. Vandross was known for his commitment to getting every detail just right in the studio, sometimes re-recording his lead vocals multiple times to capture the exact emotion he envisioned. While this pursuit of perfection earned him great respect in the music industry, it also created significant pressure for everyone around him. Producers, engineers, and record labels often found themselves working long hours as Vandross's drive for the perfect sound led to extended studio sessions and missed deadlines. He simply wasn't willing to settle for anything less than his vision, and this sometimes created tension with those who had to keep up. For example, during the production of The Night I Fell in Love, Vandross spent hours perfecting the vocals and fine-tuning the arrangements, showcasing his attention to detail. This perfectionism extended beyond his singing. As an arranger, he crafted intricate vocal harmonies, like those in A House Is Not a Home, and made sure the instrumentation matched his vision. Vandross's insistence on getting everything just right created challenges, but it was also what made his music so deeply impactful. The pressure wasn't just in the studio, it extended to his live performances too. Vandross demanded intense rehearsals, fine-tuning every aspect of the show, from harmonies to lighting. On albums like Give Me the Reason, 1986, he served as producer or co-producer, ensuring his vision came through clearly. This intense dedication sometimes caused friction with record labels, as his insistence on extended studio time delayed releases. However, his persistence always paid off, as his records consistently achieved critical and commercial success. His drive to perfect his craft led to some of the most beloved songs in music history, including Dance with My Father, Here and Now, and Never Too Much. Vandross's meticulousness earned him admiration from peers like Quincy Jones, who praised his unparalleled attention to detail, and longtime collaborator Marcus Miller, who noted that Vandross pushed everyone around him to deliver their best. In 2004, Vandross received one of the highest honors in the music industry, the Grammy Award for Song of the Year, for his deeply personal ballad, Dance with My Father. The song, a heartfelt tribute to his late father, captured the profound grief and longing that accompanied such a loss. Its raw emotion and vulnerability struck a universal chord, resonating with millions of listeners who had experienced their own losses. Vandross poured his soul into every lyric, creating a piece of music that transcended boundaries and connected deeply with people worldwide. The Grammy recognition was not just an acknowledgement of his exceptional artistry, but also a testament to his unique ability to channel his personal pain into music that moved and inspired. For decades, Vandross's songs had spoken directly to the hearts of his fans, offering comfort, joy, and a shared sense of humanity. Dance with My Father was no exception. It became an anthem of remembrance and love for many who found solace in its poignant lyrics. Yet, even as he celebrated this monumental achievement, Vandross's health prevented him from attending the Grammy ceremony in person. Instead, he accepted the award through a pre-recorded video message. Despite his physical frailty, Vandross's emotional presence in the video was undeniable. With his signature warmth and grace, he delivered a powerful message. When I say goodbye, it's never for long because I believe in the power of love. It was a brief, yet deeply moving statement, capturing the essence of his enduring spirit. He even managed to sing the final 6 words of the sentence, his voice, though fragile, carrying the familiar warmth and richness that had defined his career. His mother, Mary Ida Vandross, was at the ceremony to accept the award on his behalf, and her presence added a layer of deep emotion to the moment. It was a poignant reminder of the bond between mother and son, and a tribute to the enduring strength of family. Vandross's appearance in the video was a testament to his incredible strength. Even as his health continued to decline, his commitment to his music and his fans never wavered. The themes of love, resilience, and overcoming adversity had always been present in his songs, but now they took on an even deeper significance as Vandross faced his own personal battles. His fans, many of whom had followed his career for decades, could not help but feel moved by his continued spirit and the power of his message. On May 6, 2004, Vandross made his final public appearance on The Oprah Winfrey Show. The moment was bittersweet for both him and his audience. Though Oprah's empathetic interview style provided a platform for Vandross to share his journey, the toll of his health was evident. Vandross, who had once commanded stages with an unmatched presence, now appeared frail and vulnerable. His appearance on the show was a stark reminder of the effects of his stroke, but it was also a chance for him to connect with his fans one last time. In this emotional interview, Vandross spoke candidly about his recovery process, his music, and his life, providing a raw and honest look into the struggles he had faced over the past few years. Sadly, despite his brave efforts to recover, Vandross's health continued to deteriorate. On July 1, 2005, at the age of 54, he passed away at the JFK Medical Center in Edison, New Jersey. The cause of death was complications related to the stroke he had suffered 2 years earlier. His passing marked the end of an era in music. Vandross had been one of the most influential and beloved voices in the industry, known for his ability to bring an emotional depth to every song he sang. His death was a loss not just to the music world, but to anyone who had ever found solace in his voice. Vandross's funeral was held on July 8, 2005, at the historic Riverside Church in New York City. This church, known for its grand Gothic architecture, was the perfect setting for a service that would honor one of the most iconic figures in music. Riverside Church had been the site of many important events throughout American history, and it felt fitting that it would be the place where the music world would say goodbye to Luther Vandross. The towering spires and grand interior of Riverside Church created an atmosphere of reverence, perfectly suited to honor the legacy of Luther Vandross. This was no ordinary funeral. It was a tribute to an artist whose influence went far beyond music, turning him into a cultural icon. The church, with its breathtaking architecture, set the stage for a ceremony that reflected the extraordinary life of a man whose impact resonated with people from all walks of life. Inside the church, the mood was heavy with sorrow and respect. The pews were filled with family, friends, and some of the most influential figures in the music industry, all there to pay their respects to Vandross. It was clear that his reach had been vast, touching not only those who knew him personally, but also those who had been influenced by his work. The gathering at Riverside Church felt like a collective moment of reflection, a recognition of the indelible mark Vandross had left on the world. Outside the church, fans gathered in quiet solidarity. Many held candles, while others wore T-shirts featuring Vandross's image, showing their deep admiration for the man whose music had meant so much to them. The presence of these fans was a powerful reminder of how deeply Vandross had connected with his audience. It was not just the celebrities inside who mourned. The loss was felt by countless people whose lives had been touched by his voice and his music. Among the many luminaries who attended the service was Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, whose voice had been a major influence on Vandross. In her tribute, Franklin spoke of their friendship and her deep respect for Vandross's artistry. Her words were filled with both sorrow and admiration, a testament to the bond they shared and the impact he had on her life. As she spoke, the church seemed to hold its breath, absorbing the emotion in her voice and the weight of her words. Franklin's tribute carried a powerful message of both loss and gratitude. She recalled their shared moments, the mutual respect they had for each other's music, and the personal connection that had formed between them. As her voice filled the church, it was a moment that left everyone in quiet reflection, acknowledging the depth of the loss the music world had experienced. In her heartfelt words, Aretha Franklin captured not just the sadness of the moment, but the enduring legacy of Luther Vandross, a man who had touched so many lives with his music and his spirit. Surrounded by family, friends, and fans, the service at Riverside Church became a fitting celebration of Vandross's life. It was a moment for everyone to remember the man behind the music, the artist whose songs had been the soundtrack to countless memories, and whose influence would continue to inspire for generations to come. What do you think about Luther Vandross's life? Share your thoughts in the comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more. Thank you and goodbye.